Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies as we continue with Initiates Part 2. From Initiates Volume 1, Number 2, May 1908. Initiates Chapter 2. The biblical flood represents the sinking of the Isle of Atlantis, of which so very little is known by even the students of theology. See Philosophy of Fire. When a son of Noah possessed the third part of the world after the flood, this art broke into Chaldea and Persia, and thence spread into Egypt. The art did not break out, but was brought to Chaldea, Persia, India, and Egypt from Atlantis before the sinking of the isle. Man first became a conscious being on Atlantis, and there developed until he knew all but the secrets of heaven. And trying to wrest these from the very Creator himself, he lost all. The art having been found out by the superstitious and idolatrous Greeks, some of them, who were wiser than the rest, betook themselves to the Chaldeans and Egyptians, so that they might draw the same wisdom from their schools. Since, however, the theological study of the law of Moses did not satisfy them, they trusted to their own peculiar genius and fell away from the right foundation of those natural arts and secrets. This is evident from their fabulous conceptions and from their errors respecting the doctrine of Moses. It was the custom of the Egyptians to put forward the traditions of that surpassing wisdom only in enigmatic figures and abstract histories and terms. It is on account of this kind of writing that there is so much misunderstanding at this present day concerning the older and more especially concerning the Egyptian religion. When Dr. Ira L. Kieferling visited Mexico and the pyramids, he was received into these mysteries and not only taught these symbols, but also the inner meaning of the Egyptian initiation. This was afterwards followed by Homer with marvelous poetical skill, and Pythagoras, who was also acquainted with it, seeing that he comprised in his writings many things out of the law of Moses and the Old Testament. In like manner, Hippocrates, Thales of Miletus, Anaxagoras, Democritus, and others did not scruple to fix their minds on the same thing, yet none of them were practiced in true astrology, geometry, arithmetic, or medicine, because their pride prevented this, since they would not admit disciples belonging to other nations than their own. Even when they had got some insight from the Chaldeans and Egyptians, they become more arrogant still than they were before by nature, and without any diffidence propounded these subjects substantially indeed, but mixed with subtle fictions or falsehoods. These men became masters of philosophy not only of themselves, were not willing that these great teachers should be handed down in their purity, and thus, like the prude who cannot see the beautiful in the nude, must put on some kind of clothing to cover the simplicity and beauty of the form. And then they attempted to elaborate a certain kind of philosophy which descended from them to the Latins. It is for this reason that the grand teachings can nowhere be found in their purity, but are all covered up with a great deal of material. They are not to be found as they are, but always in forms, creeds, and ritual. These in their turn, being educated herewith, adorned it with their own doctrines, and by these the philosophy was spread over Europe. Many academies were founded for the propagation of their dogmas and rules, so that the young might be instructed, and this system flourished with the Germans and other nations right down to the present day. This is the present-day churchism. It is the same with each different denomination. These are the teachings which, as shown in Chapter 2, were handed down by the different teachers, and because of their pride and prudery could not see them or bear to see them in their purity and beauty, covered them with other falsehoods. Chapter 3. The Chaldeans, Persians, and Egyptians had all of them the same knowledge of the secrets of nature and also the same religion. The teachings and religions of all these schools were the same because they all came from the same source, namely from ancient Atlantis. It was the true God philosophy, as is thoroughly explained in the Philosophy of Fire. It was only the names that differed. The Chaldeans and Persians called their doctrine Sophia and magic. Before all things, it is necessary to have a right understanding of the nature of celestial magic. It originates from divine virtue. There is that magic which Moses practiced, and there is the maleficent or black magic of the sorcerers. There are, then, different kinds of magi. So also there is what is called the magic of nature. There is the celestial magus. There is the magus of faith, that is, one whose faith makes him whole. There is, lastly, the magus of perdition, Philosophia Sagots. And the Egyptians, because of the sacrifice, called their wisdom priestcraft. The magic of the Persians and the theology of the Egyptians were both taught in the schools of old, though there were many schools and learned men in Arabia, Africa, and Greece, such as Albumazar, Aben's Agil, Geber, Rhasis, and Avicenna among the Arabians, and among the Greeks, Machaon, Podalirius, Pythagoras, Anaxagoras, Democritus, Plato, Aristotle, and Rhodianus. Still there were different opinions amongst them as to the wisdom of the Egyptians on points wherein they themselves differed, and whereupon they disagreed with it. These men, not being truly initiates of either the Persian or Egyptian schools, did not know the inner secrets of the teachings and initiations, and therefore passed judgment, as is done this day, upon things of which they had no knowledge. Had they really been initiates, such judgment would have been impossible for them. They would have known and not guessed. For this reason, Pythagoras could not be called a wise man, because the Egyptian priestcraft and wisdom were not perfectly taught, although he received therefrom many mysteries and arcana, and that Anaxagoras had received a great many as well, is clear from his discussions on the subject of soul and its stone, which he left behind him after his death. Yet he differed in many respects from the Egyptians. Even they would not be called wise men or magi, but following Pythagoras they assumed the name of philosophy. Yet they gathered no more than a few gleams like shadows from the magic of the Persians and Egyptians. But Moses, Abraham, Solomon, Adam, and the wise men that came from the east to Christ were true magi, divine sophists and Kabbalists. All students should most carefully note this passage. If it is true, as many Masons claim, that Solomon was the founder of the Masonic fraternity, then it is also just as true that the Masonic mysteries are the very mysteries of the Egyptian, for Solomon was an initiate of the Chaldean order. Of this there is absolutely no doubt, and I challenge anyone to prove the contrary. Of this art and wisdom the Greeks knew very little or nothing at all, and therefore we shall leave this philosophical wisdom of the Greeks as being a mere speculation, utterly distinct and separate from the other true arts and sciences. Chapter 4. Many persons have endeavored to investigate and make use of the secret magic of these wise men, but it has not yet been accomplished. Many even of our own age exalt Tritimus, others Bacon and Agrippa. The writings of Paracelsus himself prove that he knew Agrippa very well and was also familiar with his writings. Paracelsus, there is rather good proof, was a co-partner with Agrippa and many others in the founding of the militia. To be continued. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.